Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Precious, and I'll be your moderator for today. I want to welcome you all to this session, the start of the training for pre-tertiary teachers on inclusive education. I hope we are all ready because it's a long journey, but it's worth the while. Um, Kindly let us know where you are joining from, your region, your school, something that will let us know more about you before we start. So let's drop our comments. I'm joining from Accra. Where are you joining from? I want to read Danfa. Okay, I can see Danfa. Oh, oh wow. Tema Kumasi in Sawam Cape Coast, Accra, Dansuman. Wow, Ada Dansuman. Mafi Kumasi Tamale. Nkwanta Shefi Yomachwa. Hey, wow. Okay, you're all very, very welcome to today's session. Today, as we said, is the start of the training for inclusive education, and we are ready to start. So today, before we start, we would want ADO to share a speech with us about the training. Let's just get to know some things more before the training starts. And on behalf of ADO, our executive director, who is here, Miss Rosalind, will talk to us for a few minutes before our training starts. So let's give her a round of applause wherever you are, from Kumasi, Sunyani, wherever, and then let's get into it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so excited for today. It's been a long way, but we are here and we are supercharged to be connected with you. We want to say a big congratulations to you all who were selected and you are here on time. I see people are not here yet. They are going to miss out. They think like, oh, I could watch after, but it's not the same. And so I'm so happy that you're here with us. For longest time, when you come into inclusive education, you know, most of you who have taken trainings in them, because we saw from your questionnaire that some of you have taken trainings in inclusive education. This is going to be a bit of a shift. We are going to focus on inclusive education, addressing the needs of learners with learning difficulties. And that is where it's going to go to, in this training session from now till April. You've all been shared with your calendar. You know what is coming up. All we require for you to commit is a minimum of 24 hours in all the training. So like this session is 2 hours, the next one is 2 hours, and you can calculate how many hours you are investing. But I told you by the end of April, what you stand to gain from it, if you be open mind, your career and how you teach, you do better. You do very well already. And we know it and we applaud you from there, but you're going to go to the extra level. There's so many information and knowledge our experts and consultants have put in together to bring you this training. So I want you to come here prepared, take notes, don't be distracted, be doing something else and be coming here. Just be present and soak in the notes. There are students in your classroom that are struggling. And if you have students who are struggling with mathematics, English, and different subjects, especially when it comes to math, handwriting, and it comes to English, put it in the comments if you have those students in your classroom. And that is what this training is going to address. So we have that formalized training down for you. Thankfully, we also have our partners, NESI, giving us a license to their international training. And this training costs, but then for the purpose of this training, they've given us actually 1,000 licenses to allow you teachers to take the training on understanding dyslexia. So aside what our facilitators and consultants are putting together, you're going to have the opportunity to take that training at your own pace. So today we are having this training, but then next week we're not having the training. So that means what you need to use that timing for next week to be learning at your own pace. And once you finish that training, you stand to get a certificate as well. So you'll be taking away two certificates. The next certificate give you level 1 certificate and level 2 certificate, and you'll be taking away another certificate from this training as well. So you'll be going away with like 3 certificates. We are also working on something that will be very exciting. We don't want to share the information with you, but those of you who will take this serious and be present all the time will also see the other advantage that we will be sharing as well. So I wouldn't want to talk much. At the end of the training, I'll come back and share more announcements, but I just want you to clap for yourself for being here. If your friend who registered and got selected is not here, call them to join. And let's give way to our keynote speaker. She's here already. And also our representatives from the Ghana Commission for UNESCO as well will come and share. So we will call on our keynote speaker. And so Precious, take over.
Thank you, Ms. Rosalie. As Ms. Rosalie said, you should clap for yourself if you are here and call on somebody who is supposed to be here to join in because we are ready. Our keynote speaker for today is Mrs. Amasewa Nikwe-Tete. She is the Deputy Director General in charge of Administration General Services at the Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, IEPA, a UNESCO Category 2 Center of Excellence within the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Mrs. Nikwe-Tete holds an MPhil in Education and an MA in Educational Leadership and Management from the University of Ghana, Legon, an MA in International Communications from Leeds University, a postgraduate certificate in Education from the University of Bedfordshire, and an honors degree in English and French from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. A passionate advocate for quality education, Mrs. Nikwe-Tete has served on numerous national education committees, including those for SDG 4 and the Transforming Education Summit. Her contributions have been instrumental in shaping key national educational policies. She is a licensed teacher, an experienced educational consultant, and an examiner for international examination bodies. She is also certified in innovation, risk, and governance, and is a member of the Certified Innovation Professionals Association, CIPA. Prior to joining IEPA, she served as the Secretary General for the Ghana Commission for UNESCO, a government agency responsible for managing Ghana's relation with UNESCO. Mrs. Nikwe-Tete possesses strong boardroom experience and currently serves on the board of Ghana Broadcasting Corporation and the Open Foundation for West Africa. She's passionate about gender and youth development as well as community development. This is our keynote speaker for today, and welcome here to take the place.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear you.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I count 335 people and increasing as we speak. I'd like to say from the onset that you made the right decision to spend some of your time learning and improving upon yourself as teachers. I am a teacher, and so when I have the opportunity to speak to my colleague teachers, I like to first and foremost say, I am one of you, and it is a pleasure to be addressing you this evening. At the onset, let me just congratulate ADO, the Africa Dyslexic Organization, for putting together this very important training with the help of UNESCO and the Ghana Commission for UNESCO, as well as NESI. We can't have enough of such trainings. Other countries are far ahead of us, and even they acknowledge that they are not where they need to be when it comes to inclusive education. It is for that reason that in putting together SDGs, SDG 4 was worded that education should be inclusive and equitable. It is not enough that we will be teaching and affording those we think are our midstream, ordinary, normal, for want of a better word. People are learning, our children who are right in the middle are learning when our outliers may not. Now, this training is important because we need to get some facts right. I am very aware that you will spend time being given the technicalities, so that is not my job here. But let us all admit that not all children learn the same way. Not all adults learn the same way. We always have our outliers, whether it's because they are learning at a super speed or it's because they tend to have difficulty learning. As teachers, the temptation to go with the majority and leave behind these two or one person in your class is very great. After all, if you have a large class and about a large class of 50 and 48 seem to get it, why should you worry? Are you Jesus to leave the 99 and come after the lost one? But the concept of inclusive education is the concept of leaving no one behind. Often, the reason why we leave these children behind is because we don't understand their learning difficulty. Even though some of us as teachers may also have learning difficulties, maybe it's never been pointed out to us. Maybe we've managed to go through the system with difficulty, but somehow it has never been pointed out to us. These children have various difficulties. It may be because they have attention disorders. They may have dyslexia. They may have dyspraxia. Remember, the focus, as the executive director said, is on those with learning difficulties. And sometimes it is these other difficulties that allow or make them struggle with their learning. As a teacher, I'd like you to think that these children are not broken. They are not deficient. The fact that you have taught them to write C 100 times and they are writing it and it is facing the opposite way all the time does not mean you should give up on them. What it means is that they are unique learners. But as unique as we all are, we have our diverse strengths and we have our diverse challenges. To be able to help a student in your class, I think there are two key requirements. The first one is your willingness to help. You must decide that not all children learn the same way, and that you will be there for the difficult, the one who is struggling, as much as you'd be there for the one who isn't. The second requirement is that you are trained, so you understand what is happening. So you don't allow their parents to tell you that their stepmother has bewitched them, or that they are a child of a god, a river god, and that this is the reason why they are facing these learning difficulties. More importantly, inclusive pedagogy means that in our classes, we are teaching everyone. Unless that child is not able to learn for themselves at all, the world is moving towards keeping everyone together. What is the point of sending a child to a special school if, when they finish, they will join us all in this our world? If you do not have a special world to send them to, why send them to a special world? Because education is about learning to coexist. And we must show our middle children, our able-bodied children, the children with no noted learning difficulties, that life is about coexisting with others. It's about tolerating others and understanding that not everyone is like you and that people are different. Studies have shown that when teachers are really well trained, when teachers understand that they must treat all children differently, all with one goal, to help them succeed. Children who would have been thrown out of class and would have had no life have had successes. They have grown up to be key members of society. And that is what this training is about. It is up to you as the duty bearer to keep these children in your class. Let them like the opportunity to come to school. Don't let children be terrified of you because you don't understand them. Don't resort to beating children who are not able to get what you are teaching just because they are different. There are well-researched and well-understood techniques to help you teach children with learning difficulties. I urge you to embrace this training. You have come into it knowing that you need training. Please take it seriously. Participate well in this workshop. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to say what your preconceptions are, because it is when you are able to put your preconceptions out there that we can evaluate at the end of the training how far you have come. Please come in with a willingness and a commitment to help the outlier, to help that child who is different. Because ultimately, we make up the world. It is us, them, everybody that makes up the world. And finally, maybe I know you'll be told this, but children who were initially written off as not being able to learn, as not fit to be in education, have gone on to solve some of the world's biggest problems. Who knows, the next Bill Gates could be in your class. Who knows, the next Stephen Hawking could be in your class. So it's important that we learn to provide education, not just for those in the middle, but all our students. And I urge you to come into this training with this open mind so that we leave the workshop with a renewed commitment to give every child in Ghana an inclusive and equitable education. They all deserve it. Humanity must leave no one behind. And if we work together, we can empower minds and transform lives. I wish you all the best in this training, and I thank you for your attention. Good evening.
Thank you so much, Madam Amma. Thank you for the support all these times and the great work you're doing in the space of education and empowering leaders. And we believe our teachers here today have heard your words and they've taken one or two from it, if not all, but I'm hoping they have taken a lot of things from what you have said. We thank you so much for the support you give to the Africa Dyslexia Organization, you and your team back then at the UNESCO Ghana Commission for UNESCO supported us a lot, and we always appreciate when we call on you. You know, sometimes I say we wish there are some leaders that we can duplicate. And what I mean by that is that people like you, if we can duplicate you all into the different sectors, I feel Ghana has a greater future. And I hope from some people hearing from you, we will follow some of the good examples, leaders that when you test them, it doesn't take them time to respond to you, and they are always present to show up. And one of them is you. And so we are very grateful for your presence and honoring this invitation. Thank you so much. I'd like to say a very big thank you to our partners again, UNESCO, Ghana Commission for UNESCO, NESI. They have made it possible for us to put this training together for you. And so we will then give opportunity to call on Mr. Sari from the UNESCO Ghana Commission to say a few words from their side to you also. Thank you very much. Mr. Sari, if you're here, you can unmute and share your few words with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rosalind, for the opportunity to share some few words. Protocol-wise, I believe I should have spoken before my boss, my immediate past boss. But that notwithstanding, I have to say something. I'm saying so because today is International Day for Women and Girls in Sciences. And I don't know if any of you followed parliamentary proceedings. She was eulogized on the floor of Parliament for her contribution to education. So it is no wonder that, Rosalind, you are also saying those kind words and great words about her. So thank you once again for the opportunity to make this short input. When we look at SDG 4, it talks about quality education. And we cannot talk about quality without talking about inclusive education. We cannot talk about equity. We cannot also talk about gender equality. So any move that looks at putting the three together to achieve a common goal in education, that move can be seen to be called or seen as quality. When we consider inclusivity, as a country, we have concentrated so much on people with physical impairments. And we, like you did say, we have not concentrated on people or learners with learning difficulties. When we look at the aim of this project, and I quote, the project aims to transform teacher education through the implementation of a comprehensive teacher capacity development program, which is aimed at supporting teachers to identify students with learning disabilities and provide the needed support that will help them excel. It is in this light that I believe that when we were considering the selection of so many projects that had come before us to be considered under the UNESCO Participation Program scheme, that we took it upon ourselves to consider your project. When we looked at the numbers involved, when I first saw 500, I asked myself, wow, how can this be achieved? 500 people. And as we speak, I can see 406 people online who are trying to gather that information. So I can say that the Ghana Commission for UNESCO strongly associates itself with Dyslexia Africa to champion the cause of dyslexia in the country, particularly when they commit to early detection by teachers. When it is our hope that after the training, the teachers or the facilitators will be able to identify learners with learning disabilities and provide the effective learning support to them. On this note, I will once again congratulate Africa Dyslexia Organization for this challenging feat that they've taken upon themselves. And the Ghana Commission for UNESCO remains committed to supporting this project to its conclusive end. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sari. Thank you so much for all the support you and your team are giving to us. We look forward not just working on this project, but looking on a more long-term project that we can all impact the world. 1 in 5 is likely to be dyslexic. And so that means we're looking at, that's the dyslexia is the highest learning disability or learning difference we have. So then that means you have about 15 to 20% of our population who are likely to be dyslexic. People that we call, say, omutia bon, everybody can understand tree here. And so this is very necessary. I say something all the time that you go to every classroom and find a child who is struggling terribly to absorb what is being taught to them. But you cannot go to every class and find somebody who is visually impaired. And so what that means is this is a serious case, but why has it been forgotten all this while? And that is why it excites me that we could partner with UNESCO, the Ghana Commission for UNESCO, and NESI to bring you this training. I'll call on Precious to introduce our facilitator so that we can dive into today's introductory to special ed and inclusive education. Thank you very much. Precious, you can take over. I would be introducing our facilitator, Justina Asapweje. Justina is an inclusive education expert and education consultant with experience from the UK and Ghana as well. She is well vested in the topic she is going to take us on today. And so I want you to embrace her. Let's welcome her as she takes the stage to start her session with us. Thank you all. Justina, welcome. And we are so grateful to have.
Good evening and welcome, everybody. I am really excited to be here. So can you just give me an emoji indication that you can hear me fine? And let's get settled and get comfortable because we're going to have a really good conversation about special and inclusive education. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so in this session, we are going to look at the context of special and inclusive education in Ghana. What are the key concepts that we need to be aware of? What are some of the legal considerations? And what are the practical implications for teachers? Now, as a teacher myself and a previous head teacher, school principal, I know that teaching is not easy. Teaching is very, very challenging. And we are continually being asked to do more and more in teaching. And so we have to equip ourselves with the necessary information, knowledge, and skills and strategies to try and make our job a little bit easier and to try and really experience true success in what we do. So let's start with what is inclusion. The word inclusion is spoken about so much, but sometimes we don't quite get it right. So inclusion is not the same as integration. Integration is when you allow somebody to come into your space, but you don't do anything to welcome them, to make them feel like they belong, to listen to them, to ask their opinion, to allow them just to be part of what you're doing. That's integration. And for years, we've thought that that was inclusion, and it's not. Inclusion is about welcoming people in, listening to their voice, celebrating their difference, understanding that we are not all the same, and so therefore we can't all perform the same. And having that recognition is when people then really start to feel like they belong and they feel like they can participate. So it will be like if somebody invites you into their home and they allow you to come in and they allow you to sit on the chair, but they don't greet you, they don't welcome you, they don't offer you any water. When they're eating, they don't call you. When they go to use the washroom, they don't show you where the washroom is. When they're getting ready to go and sleep, they don't tell you where the bedroom is. And you just have to sit there during that time until somebody comes to get you. That's integration. Inclusion would be you welcome them in, you offer them water, you ask them how their day has been. Any activity that you're doing, you involve them. When you go to eat, you say, you're welcome, and you invite them in. That is belonging. That is showing inclusion. And that is recognizing that that person that's in your space is wanted there, they're celebrated there. So when it comes to diversity, every student brings something special to your classroom. Every student, even the ones that are troubling you, are bringing something special to your classroom. Your job as a teacher is to find out what is it that this person brings that we can celebrate. So in this session today, we are going to look at how we can create a space where differences are seen as strengths. So just because you're different doesn't mean you're less than. In fact, the difference that you bring, we can use that to really benefit everybody. How we can make learning richer and more meaningful for everyone. So it's not just the children who can write and read and sit exams that are going to be celebrated. It's all the children that are going to be celebrated. And we're going to look at how we can do that and what that means. So inclusion and equitable learning opportunities means that we're not happy with just some of our children succeeding in class. We want all of our children to succeed in our classroom. So when we talk about equitable learning, it's not about everybody getting the same thing at the same time in the same way. No. Equitable learning is every student getting what they need to succeed. This means that you need to understand that your students are different and they have different kinds of help that they need to learn well. It's that you recognize that students start at different points. Some will start at 1 and get to 10 very quickly. Some will start at 1 and only get to 3. Some will start at 1 and get to 5 and get stuck and need more help to get to 10. They are all starting from a different place. So if currently you teach in the way that everybody will do the same thing in the same way, everybody will learn the same, everybody will progress the same, then unfortunately, that is not inclusive or equitable teaching and learning. And we're going to look at what we can do to change that. So some of the strategies that we can use to change that is to create a fairer way of children to learn. Some children can sit and learn. Some children need to stand. Some children need to move around. Some children will learn just by you telling them. Some children have to see it for themselves. Some children have to make things and do things in order for the learning to really be strong. And you need to be able to teach in all of those ways. You need to be able to take away anything that is stopping the children learning in your class, and then you need to adapt. So you're going to hear this term, multisensory learning. You're going to hear it a lot over the next few weeks. And it just means that you use all the senses for children to learn. So they will see, they will hear, they will do, they will make, they will say. You use all of their senses. So it's also about knowing the tools that you can use in your classroom. Now, I know resources are going to be very, very limited. Many of our classrooms we don't have everything that we need in the classroom. But what we do have, and one of the things Ghanaians are exceptionally good at, is creativity and being able to create nothing, something out of nothing. It's an absolute skill that us in the UK, we don't have. Being able to create something out of nothing in your classroom, being inventive and creative about how you can use the little that you have to support the learning that your children will undertake in your classrooms. So before we dive into that, let's look at what learning differences is. So you will be used to hearing learning differences, learning difficulties, learning disabilities. They all relate to the same area, and we're going to unpack that a little bit. So learning differences are simply just a different way that our brains are wired and that we learn differently. So the neurons, the makeup in our brain, they're not the same. If you take our hands, none of us have got exactly the same hands. None of us have got exactly the same stature. Even twins, identical twins, there are differences between them. So our brains are wired differently. And up until now, if your brain didn't function a particular way, you were made to feel that you were less than, that you were rubbish, you were no good. But now we understand that those people who think differently, they're the ones that are changing the world. And so we need to learn to celebrate them. So some children with learning differences might have difficulty in reading, writing, maths, attention, memory, and social skills. That doesn't mean that they lack intelligence. It doesn't mean that they're stupid. It doesn't mean that they're being foolish. It doesn't mean that they are not trying. They are just learning differently. Common types of learning differences are dyslexia, so difficulties with reading and writing and fluency. Dysgraphia, difficulties in writing. Dyscalculia, difficulties with maths and numeracy and numbers. ADHD, so attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder. Difficulty with focus and attention and memory and impulsivity. autism spectrum disorder, difficulty in communication and social relationships, and repetitive behaviors. Each one presents differently how they will be challenged in the classroom. No two people are the same, even if they have the same learning difference. Dyslexic people are not all the same. Autistic people are not all the same. ADHD people are not all the same. So you cannot treat them all the same way. You have to learn who they are, how they work, and adjust accordingly. And some people will say, that's really difficult. I have a class of 30. How am I supposed to know how to help all of them? You find the ways that can help all of them, and then you find the ways that can help some of them. So if you know that you have children in your class where attention is a difficulty, you will do more activities that will help to gain their attention and strengthen their memory. If you have a few children where reading is a real struggle, you will find a way to introduce more activities that allow them to learn at a pace and have strategies of how to decode words. So how do we learn how these sounds, what these sounds make, and how you put those sounds together to make a word? So you'll come across phrases like blending, phonics, fluency. As a teacher, it's your job to try and read about these things and learn more about them so they can help you in your classroom. Some challenges require specific interventions, and some of those interventions you may not be able to deliver as a teacher. But once you recognize that those challenges are there, you will then be able to see where you can get the help from to help the students in your class. So those are learning differences, the different ways that our brain is made up. What's the difference between a learning difference and a learning disability? Essentially, it's how much it affects the child. Some learning differences with the right strategies and the right input, they can overcome them and work through them. Yeah. Some learning disabilities need more targeted support. So you can have dyslexia and it can be quite mild. And so the strategies in the classroom will be enough for you to be able to overcome those challenges. But you could have dyslexia and it's very profound and very, very difficult and challenging. You will need more targeted support. So that's when it actually now becomes a disability, because it stops you from being able to do the day-to-day things that other people take for granted. So knowing the difference will really help you as teachers to know what kind of support does the child in my class need. Is it intervention that I can give as a classroom teacher, or do I need to seek more specialist support from another professional? So, specific learning difficulties, small targeted challenges in specific learning skills like handwriting or movement coordination. These can be improved with focused teaching strategies. Learning disabilities, complex brain-based conditions that affect how a person learns, understands, and processes information across multiple areas of thinking and understanding. So somebody with profound dyslexia may have real problems with coordination, direction, memory, recall. But somebody with mild dyslexia, it may just be around handwriting, movement, letter recognition. The intervention approaches that are going to be needed will depend on how severe that difficulty or that disability impacts on the person. So it can be something as skills training, recognizing, decoding, understanding. Or it could be targeted therapies that needs to be delivered over a period of time. So I want us to look at models of disability, and using your reactions, please tell me how many of you have heard of models of disability? How many of you are aware of it? Just do a thumbs up or a thumbs down for me to see. Okay, so it's looking like a few of you haven't heard of this, and some of you have. Great stuff. So models of disability are theoretical perspectives on how we view disability. So remember, we've said we have learning differences, learning disabilities, and disabilities, right? So there are three models that I want us to talk about. The medical model, which I think is the one that we will all be very, very familiar with. The medical model of disability sees disability as a defect or impairment within the individual. Something is broken and needs to be fixed. It focuses on finding out and treating the disability, what is broken. And it's often through medical interventions, therapy, or medication. So that's the medical model. There's something wrong, it needs to be fixed. These are the strategies we're going to use to fix it. The social model says actually it's the barriers in society that causes the difficulty, not the individual person. So actually, if we change the environment and we change society, we would remove a lot of these barriers. So for example, a dyslexic person is going to be hindered in accessing the curriculum if the teaching is only delivered in one way, if there are no strategies or resources to help them to understand how letters are put together to form words, if they are only assessed from writing exams, that's the only way they can be assessed for their learning. You're not going to be able to see how brilliant that person is because it's just one way of learning and one way of assessing. But if we had a classroom where you can do assessment through talking, verbal assessment, you can do practical assessments, and you can do written assessments, you'll be able to see how brilliant lots of children are because each child will be able to do it in a way that suits them. Yeah. So instead of focusing on the individual and what's wrong, the focus is on changing attitudes, changing policies, changing practices. That means that people with disabilities are excluded or mistreated. Then you have the biopsychosocial model. And this one takes a bit of the medical model and it takes a bit of the social model. So it takes a holistic approach in saying that actually we need therapies, we need intervention, we need medicine, but we also need to change society and we also need to change the attitudes within society. So we need to make things less harder for people with disabilities in society. So in your classrooms, but we also need the formal interventions that are needed to help them to overcome the barriers that they are experiencing. So why does it matter? Why does inclusive education matter? It matters because we want to improve the learning outcomes of our children. None of us as teachers sit in the classroom and want our children to fail. We don't want our children to fail. We want them to succeed. And most of us would have come into teaching because we want to impact the next generation. We want to see them flourish and grow and succeed. We want to be able to say, oh, that was my student. I taught that one. Yes, I influenced that child that's now a minister, a doctor, a teacher, a business owner, the richest man in Ghana or the richest woman in Ghana. I taught them. So in order to do that, in order to improve learning outcomes, we need to be able to differentiate our instruction. So giving instructions in different ways. We need to be able to personalize the support for our children. And we need to make sure that the environment that they are coming in welcomes them, encourages them, and engages them. If you have a class where children, when they try, they're ridiculed, they're name called, they're laughed at, children are not going to try. But if you have a class where every child is encouraged, try, it's okay. Don't worry, you made a mistake. We can do it again. That was brilliant. Well done. That child will keep trying until they achieve their outcome. That's what we want. We also want to improve social justice and equality because we know that education is the doorway to success. So regardless of what students' needs are, we want them to be able to access education, quality education, We want to foster social justice, and we want to promote respect for the individual differences. And when a young person feels like they belong, they contribute. So there's an old saying that a saying that says, "The child who is not loved by the village will burn the village down," something along those lines. If we do not empower our young people to feel accepted and welcomed and celebrated so that they can try, we stand the risk of them turning against society. We have so many people who are in prison, who are on the streets, who have mental health, who have alcohol problems. And when you speak to them and you trace their journey, you can take it back to a time when they were rejected, when they were made to feel like they were worthless and useless, that they had nothing to offer. And so they gave up on themselves as well. And then they went down the wrong path. So social justice and equality is a huge part of why inclusive education matters. It's also about us building an inclusive society, a society that prepares students to live and work in a diverse world. We are so connected now because of the power of the internet. Our children are likely to be able to go outside of Ghana and work elsewhere, work abroad, work in other African countries, work in other Ghanaian cities and towns. We need to produce people who are able to work with other people who are not like them and be able to work with them positively. We want people that are empathetic, future bosses, future employers. We want you to be able to see your employees as human beings. But if you've been treated like less than a human, then how can you learn to treat other people like humans? It's very difficult. Understanding and accepting that we are all different and celebrating that is our way of developing a more inclusive society. So what has this got to do with you as teachers in public schools? Your role as a teacher in inclusive education is critical. Teachers are the only profession that produces every other profession that exists in society. Teachers, in my humble opinion, have a much more powerful role than any doctor, any politician, any business owner, any soldier, you think of any job in society, a teacher has played a role in getting that person to that job. So your role in inclusive education is critical. And you can only achieve it by doing three things. You need to understand the individual needs of the children that are in your classroom. You need to understand how do they work? What makes them tick? What makes them do good? What makes them switch off? How can we get the best out of these children? And you do that by having effective assessments, collaborating with specialists, and having ongoing communication with parents or caregivers to make sure that the children in your classroom are getting the appropriate support that they need. You need to make sure that you are differentiating instruction. And for anyone on the call who's not familiar with that term, it's literally just giving instructions in different ways. So some children, you'll just be able to show them and they can get up. Some children, you'll have to explain once, twice, 3 times. Some children, you'll have to use different language. Differentiating, tailoring your teaching methods to meet the diverse needs of the learners in your classroom helps to create an inclusive environment. You can adapt to materials that you're using. Change the pace. Sometimes you need to go at a quicker pace and be excited. Sometimes you need to be slower and allow children to process the information that you're sharing. Provide alternative ways of assessing. Don't rely on just sitting down at a table writing papers. Assess them with questions. Having differentiated questioning. So knowing that for this particular child, I can ask this complex question, but for this child, I need to adapt it and simplify the question a bit more. Use a variety of teaching strategies to ensure that all of the students in your classroom not only hear what you're saying, but they understand what you're saying. Check for their understanding. Do they understand what you said, or are they just saying yes so they don't get in trouble? And then create a supportive environment where children are not scared to fail. Failing is an opportunity to learn. But if children are scared to fail, they lose those opportunities to learn. No one who's made it in the world got it right the first time. Some of our greatest heroes that we admire for what they've achieved in the world, they didn't achieve it straight away. They didn't achieve it until adulthood. They really struggled in class, but they tried and they kept trying and they kept trying. And that's where the success comes from. Promote respect for individuals. Don't run a classroom where you are continually ridiculing the children. Look at that one. Look at that one's face. Look at your head. Oh, is that what you did? How did your parents raise you? Don't ridicule children. Promote respect for individual differences and address bullying or discrimination proactively. Don't you be the bully. Some of you teachers, I'm sad to say, are bullies in your classroom. You intimidate your children, you ridicule them, you call them names, you make them feel so small that they don't even try. Some teachers will happily say, as for you, you'll fail my class. What a wow. That a teacher will say that. For me as a teacher, my pride comes in my children succeeding. I take no pride in a child failing in my class. If a child fails in my class, then I failed. So that's what it means for you as teachers in inclusive education. So I mentioned earlier about multi-sensory teaching. What does that mean? It means engaging all of your learners. So how do we do that? We do that through 3 ways. Visual aids. So using colorful posters, diagrams, images, videos to illustrate concepts for students with auditory processing difficulties. So children who cannot just hear, they need to see. Visual aids can help. Now, some of you will say, and rightly, and I understand this, we don't have printer, we don't have a laminator, we don't have access to all of these things. What I would say to you is, I hear you, I understand, but please find a way to make it happen. Draw the things yourself if you need to. Bring items from the house. Invite the children to bring items so that there's visual representation of what it is you're trying to teach. I remember watching a video of a guy in a village school who managed to teach ICT to his students and they passed, and he drew all the components of the computer. So I know for some of you, resources are very limited, but try and do what you have, try and make it work. Auditory resources, recording things so that they can hear, allowing some of your children to record the lesson so they can listen back to it later. Having hands-on activities, allowing children to do physical things. If you're learning about plant cells, take them outside and let them look at the plants outside. If you're learning about the solar system, find a way to get them to build the solar system. Old newspaper, water, a small bit of flour, build it. Find a way. I know it's not easy, but if you are passionate and committed, you will find a way. Multisensory, teaching in different ways to engage your children. So you're doing multisensory teaching. Now it's about how you assess the teaching that you're doing. So all of you will be familiar with formative assessments. So formative assessments are the tests that you do at the end of a teaching block, a teaching subject. Yeah. So, sorry, excuse me. Formative assessment are the assessments you do as you go along. Yeah. Summative assessment is what you do at the end of it. It sums up what you've learned. Formative is as you're going along. So how many of you mark the children's work and you just tick or you cross? Because one of the things that will really help children is if you give them feedback on how they can improve the work. So, oh, this was a great piece of writing. Next time, think about the symbolisms that you can use. This was a great piece of work. Next time, identify a theory that can support this. This was great work. Next time, make sure your handwriting forms between the lines. So it's a continuous process of monitoring students' learning and giving them feedback to guide what they do. And it means that you need to also be gathering data on the students, their understanding, what their learning gaps are, how you adjust your teaching strategies to meet what you can see you've taught something, but they're not getting it. How can you teach it again in a way that they will get it? Do you need to repeat it? I've had seasons where I have a scheme of work that should have been covered in 3 terms. And the scheme of work, term 1, I'm still on week 1 of the scheme of work because the children are just not getting it. And so we have to keep going over and revisiting it. Now, I know for a lot of you, you are working to a curriculum that has been set for you, and it's a lot harder. But sometimes you need to just find a way to just reinforce the learning. And when you can't get it through it in the class time, then think about, okay, what can I do outside of class that can help them? What can I send them home with that they can do at home that will help them? We've talked about differentiated instruction, tailoring your instruction to meet the diverse needs of your learners. And that means adapting the content, the process, the product, the learning environment to make sure that all the students have the opportunity to learn and succeed. But also, you want a classroom where a child is not scared to ask a question. You want a classroom where children are asking questions all the time to the point that even you're fed up. But when children ask questions, it means that they are learning. It means they're interested. It means they're focused. So if you can provide opportunities for children to ask questions, you are fostering their learning and you are allowing them to process the information and output into action. Incorporating multiple senses into your teaching benefits all learners, not just learners who are dyslexic or have dysgraphia or are ADHD or are autistic. All your learners will benefit from multisensory teaching because you involve what they see, you involve what they hear, you involve what they do with their hands. And the more you can provide that kind of learning, the more that the information will be embedded. Now, in our brain, we have these branches, they look like tree branches, and they're called synapses. And synapses are built. We don't have all of our synapses when we're born, they're built. So in our brain, when we're learning a new skill, these synapses are growing. So if you think about a branch and it has tiny little buds on it, the more that they are learning, the more that the buds grow. Now, in that skill, I can't remember the exact number, but let's say it's something like there's 176 synapses that you would need to have in order to learn a new skill. But when you learn through play, when you learn through multisensory teaching, you significantly reduce how many synapses I need. So instead of me needing 176 synapses to learn one thing, I might only need 30. And I've learned that thing, and that thing will be with me for life. So offering multisensory teaching benefits every single one of the children, one of the students in your class. And in doing that, you assure that there's more equity in learning. Now, what is equity? Equity is not everybody getting the same thing at the same time. That's equal opportunities. Equity is everybody getting what they need at that particular time. So for some of your students, equity might mean more time. For some of your students, equity might mean learning outside. For some of your students, equity might mean learning through listening. So you need to recognize the individual strengths of your students. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have 30 students, you've got to do teaching in 30 different ways. No. It means that you might have to do teaching in 3 different ways or 2 different ways, because most of your children will be able to access one of them. So identifying their unique abilities, their learning styles, and their potential, and not relying on the one-size-fits-all approach to education, which is what we've had so far, that everybody learns the same way. Adapt the resources in your environment so that it can meet the diverse needs. Use assistive technology where at all possible. And again, I know resources are hard. I know we've had the one class, one laptop, and it's not been everywhere. It's difficult. But if you can use assistive technology, please do. It makes your life easier as a teacher, and it really helps for the students to overcome the barriers. Create alternative ways of assessing their learning. Create collaborative learning environments. Design the classroom space so that children can learn from each other, that they can interact with each other. So we have a tradition that all of our classes, they're rows and they all face the teacher. How about having your classroom set up so they sit in groups and you set them to tasks, and then you walk along the different groups and see how you're getting on? Think about how you place the children. Can you place a really strong child next to a child that's not as strong so they can learn from each other? Can you place the children that are all struggling in one area? Can you place them together so that you can work with them in a focused way and really help them overcome the area that they're struggling in? Can you group the independent learners, the strong learners? Can you group them all together and set them a task because you're confident that they'll be able to get on with it, and then focus your attention on the children that need you more? Is that possible? And then for yourself as teachers, can you invest in yourself in terms of your continuous professional development? Can you invest in your training? Can you invest in accessing the free resources that are around within Ghana and outside of Ghana? Can you sign up to professional bodies that will give you free training and advice and guidance and strategies so that you can be learning the latest way of teaching, the most effective way of teaching neurodiverse students? So let's now look at dyslexia and other related learning differences. You are going to learn more about this in the coming weeks. But for those of you that are unfamiliar with dyslexia, dyslexia is a specific learning difference characterized by difficulties with accurate and fluent word recognition, spelling, and decoding. So for those of you, you'll do this in more detail, but decoding simply means if you see the letters C-A-T, you are able to decode it to understand that those letter sounds are ka-a-t. And fluency means that you're able to now blend them together. So instead of you reading ka-a-t, you'll know that you can bring cat, 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 cat. It's the processing of language to make reading and writing more accessible. It can be very challenging for individuals despite normal intelligence and educational opportunities. Dyslexia is not about intelligence. A lot of the learning differences that we have and we know have nothing to do with intelligence. It's simply how the brain processes what it sees. So key characteristics around dyslexia are challenges with phonological processing, working memory, and rapid naming of symbols. It's not a reflection of intelligence. It's a different way of processing language that requires specialist educational support in a lot of cases. But some of you teachers are able to deliver some of that intervention and support in your classrooms. By introducing focused time to look at phonics and reading every single day in your classroom, you are contributing and working towards helping children with dyslexia navigate the challenges that they have. Beyond dyslexia, there are several learning differences that impact the educational experiences. Conditions like dysgraphia, which is writing difficulties. So you know what you want to write, but you cannot write, you cannot form. Dyscalculia, mathematical processing challenges. And ADHD, attention deficit or hyperactivity. ADHD can look very different in girls and in boys, and it's really worth bearing that in mind. Some children can be very hyperactive, very busy, have lots and lots of energy. Some children with ADHD are daydreamers. They get distracted, they go off into a daydream. They lack focus and attention in the classroom because they've drifted off. But it can significantly influence how students learn and interact with educational content. So each learning difference represents a unique cognitive profile, and recognizing and supporting these differences is crucial for creating inclusive learning environments. And that's the only way that you will be able to allow every student to demonstrate their full potential and develop their strengths if you are able to recognize that children learn differently. And these particular children I have responsibility for, this is how they learn. And therefore, this is how I need to teach. It's no longer acceptable to think, this is how I teach, and so this is how you must learn. It's not, we cannot do that anymore. Now, it has to be, this is how these children learn. This is how I must learn to teach. Because if you are going to see success in your classroom, you need to work with the children in front of you. You cannot work with the children that you had 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Those children are gone. We're now working with a different generation of children. If you haven't been exploring and reading about Gen Z, please let that be some homework for you. Go and read about Gen Z. They learn differently. The things that we did in the past do not work for these group of children and young people. And so we have to change. We have to adapt how we do things. So, inclusive education is about valuing the unique potential of the children and young people in our classrooms, creating learning environments that support the different ways of learning, and to helping all of the students in our class succeed. It is not good enough as a teacher if I have 30 children and 5 fail. It's not good enough as a teacher if I have 30 children and 1 fails. Every failure I take as a personal reflection on my failure to make sure that that child was able to learn. I cannot do that on my own. I have to do that with my colleagues. I have to do that by working with the parents. I have to require the parents to be involved and to support me in what I'm doing. And I have to require the students also to work with me and support me to help them. And the only way to do that is to know them and to know the best way to help them. And that's through creating personalized support, learning and adapting what I do to ensure that it's a personalized learning approach that I take. I need to be able to help every student reach their potential. I need to make sure that my classroom is a fair, safe, creative, exciting space that all children will be able to learn. The children need to be excited to come into my classroom space. because they know that they are going to be celebrated, they are going to be stretched, they're going to be excited, they are going to learn, they are going to succeed. And the children that went before them will tell them the stories. Oh, Mrs. Osafo J's class, you're going to be great. She's brilliant. You're going to really enjoy it. Oh, you're going to learn so much. That's how I want the children to be able to talk about me. That's how I would like the children to be able to talk about you. I want the children to be able to say, oh, you've got Mr. Sumasi. Oh, wow, you're so lucky. Oh, he's such a good teacher. When I speak to students, because I do coaching, and I hear the way students talk about their teachers, it breaks my heart. Because to be known as a teacher, oh, that's for that one, they'll fail you. Don't worry. That teacher, that teacher is wicked. That teacher does not care. That's really heartbreaking. Don't be that teacher. Be the teacher that everybody wants to be in your class. And you can only do that by personalizing the learning, making sure that your classroom is inclusive, because you are then contributing to the development of society and the enrichment and the empowerment of the individuals that are going to become the adults. So that brings us to the end of our presentation, and it gives us a great amount of time for us to do some question and answers and for us to just explore what are your expectations for the next few weeks? What are you expecting to achieve? What would you like to see? And what are some of the challenges that you think you're going to need some help to overcome? So if you can put your hands up, and then I will call your name, and then you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So I'm just going by how I see you on the screen. So Ferdinand, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question. If you do not want to unmute and you've got a question, just put it in the chat and we will pick it up. Yeah, Ferdinand, do you want to unmute? Okay, let's move. There you go.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Ferdinand Asante. For now, I won't disclose my school, but I'm going to ask the question. I've identified a student in my class. He's very, well, I would say, I wouldn't know his ADHD, but I see him as a hyperactive child. And I've gone ahead to educate him not to take fizzy drinks because I realize that's what makes him, you know, pour out a lot of energy. And then we've tried to speak to the parent, but nothing is happening, and he's really struggling. But if you talk to him, he's able to communicate, he's able to understand everything you say to him. But then when it comes to working, he's struggling. So in that way, how best can I handle that particular child? And I have a large class as well, so it becomes very difficult to do. Any help?
Okay, so obviously without knowing the child or having observed or just from what the information you're giving me, one of the things that I would advise is if you have a child that's very active in your class, then find ways to give them breaks in their learning. So chunk the learning. So when you give them instruction one at a time and allow them to just have a 2-minute brain break in between tasks, because it helps them to refocus. If it's possible, allow them to move around. So movement breaks are really, really helpful for children with ADHD or any kind of hyperactivity, high energy levels. So a brain break or a movement break is really helpful. Give them one instruction at a time. So when they've done this, they go to that. Help having a checklist. So if they get distracted, they're able to go back to the list and look at what was next. So one of the things that I used to do was I would write on the board the task. So first we're going to do this. Second, we're going to do that. Third, we're going to do that. And when all the children had done it, I would cross it out. But it would always be visible so that for the child who gets distracted, they can refer back to it so they know what they're supposed to be doing. So hopefully that's helpful. But one of the things you can do is read up about ADHD and teaching strategies, and see if there's any other strategies that you're able to employ that would help that young person in the classroom. But also speak to the parent and see if there's anything in terms of their routine, what they're eating that could change, that might help. Because sometimes some of the foods that we eat increase our energy levels and it really doesn't help us. So maybe looking at what they eat in the morning for breakfast, is that causing some of that? Is that extra energy worse in the morning and after lunch and after snack, or is it throughout the day? So try and work out if there's a pattern that's happening.
So I hope
So I
that's
hope that's
helpful.
helpful.
Can I would also suggest that you kind of consult with I don't know if you're a head of school or I understand you're a teacher, but your position will be good to discuss this with your management and find a way to bring the child's parents in the conversation and see, have they even done an assessment for the child? And if not, it would be good for them to have an assessment done to understand the extent at which the ADHD that you are ascertaining is. Maybe it's not just that, there could be other issues as well. So understanding, just asking him not to take fizzy drink is not the only thing. And like Justina said, there could be a lot more things that is happening at home, food that he's eating, oil-based food and all these things. So I would bring that kind of aspect of having somebody, a qualified assessor, look into things, and then we'll be able to suggest the best way possible. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, let us go to Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel, please unmute yourself and then ask your question. And then I'll take a question from the chat.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. So I'm going to limit my question to the early years. So how is it good? My first question is it good to label a child? Let's say you realize that a child has dyslexia. Is it good to label the child? What are the stages the child will have to go through before you can label a child? My next question would be, if you have a child you think is struggling with a particular, let's say, learning disorder, and the parents are not accepting it, how are you able to collaborate with them and help the child? Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Rachel. Okay, so the answer to your first question is a categoric no. Never label a child, even if you suspect that a child might be dyslexic or you suspect a child is ADHD. That's all it is a suspicion, because unless you're qualified to actually assess and make that diagnosis. So don't label children. Focus on children's strengths rather than focusing on the areas that they're challenged in. And the areas that they're challenged in, look and see, how can I help them in this area? So I know that in Ghana, we have this culture where we call children by the name of what they are doing, you know. So my mind's gone blank, but I know that there's, you know, you'll meet someone and somebody will be called forehead. And they'll be, why are you called forehead? Oh, because when they were a child, that's how everyone called them at school, because their forehead was big. So, but the damage that does, you know, and us that are older, we managed through those situations, and maybe it didn't really affect us like that. But the generation of children that we're raising now are very, very sensitive to these things. So we have to be really careful and really mindful of the words that we're using to talk about children and describe them. So please avoid the labeling. Focus on the area of need and address the area of need. So actually, there's an issue around spelling, right? Let's look at what help we can give you around your spelling, because I can see that you're really struggling here. Or I've noticed that spelling is something that's really hard for you. Let me come and see me at this time. Let me see what I can do to help you. That kind of thing. And then the second question was around parents, if I'm remembering correctly, and parents accepting that there may be a difficulty, a challenge, or a problem. And I've seen in the chat quite a few of you have put that parental response. Now, one of the things that I would say to you is that you have to be really sensitive, because these are people's children. And sometimes some conversations are very difficult to have. And also it may be that, we like to say, oh, this parent is in denial, this parent is in denial. But what you have to understand is how a child is at home is not necessarily how the child presents at school, and vice versa. So there may be areas that you see in school that are very challenging that the parents has no idea, because they don't see it at home. At school, there are demands placed on children that they don't experience at home. It's a completely different environment. The rules are different. The expectations are different. So it may be that the parent genuinely has not seen it. What I always advise teachers to do is stick to the facts and don't give opinions. I've been in a meeting where a teacher has said, oh, as for your child, they have no respect of people, they have no manners, they are so rude, they do not listen. But what the teacher wanted to communicate is that the child gets very easily distracted and doesn't follow instruction. Now, with that feedback, that parent became so offended that she was taking the child out of the school. But had the teacher said, actually, we're really struggling to get his attention and focus, he gets really easily distracted, he doesn't follow the instructions that are given to him in the class, you might find that the parent says, at home too, when I tell him to do something, he doesn't do it straight away. And then you're able to build a collaborative relationship. But if you put the parent in a place where they feel that they have to defend their child, you're not going to be able to work with them. So I always say, stick to the facts. What are the facts? The facts are, in this particular area of learning, this is what I see as the struggle, or this is what the issue is. How can we help them? This is what I think will support them. They need this, or X, whatever the solution is. If you present that, to most parents will receive that and they will work with you. But if you come from a place where a parent feels that they have to defend their child, then that's going to be really difficult. Then you have the other side where a parent might come to you and say, beat them because they're not doing this. And look, I brought you a cane. When they're not doing what they need to do that. You also have to be responsible and say, actually, no, I'm not going to do that, but this is what we can do to help them. And you have to advocate for that child. So I think it's all in the way that you speak. Sometimes you just need to show some sensitivity and show some respect for the parent and also for the child in how you communicate some of these things. So I'll take a question. I hope that was helpful. I'll take a question from the chat. Which one? Should I read through? Yes, please.
So the question I see, which is quite interesting, and this is from Nemiti, if I'm right. It says, how can we deal with parents left-handed who believe that there is something wrong with their child and they insist that the child must learn to write with the right hand?
Okay, so I know that there are a lot of cultural understandings when it comes to this. We cannot go back to years ago. Children would have their hands tied behind their back. They would be beaten if they used their left hand instead of using their right hand. There were so many things that were done to children to stop them using their right hand. But it's a natural human formation. Like, you cannot change how a person writes. So it's about educating the parent to understand that as much as in our culture, we do not use our left hand for anything. When it comes to writing, if we want to see the best from the child, we need to allow them to use the natural hand that they are inclined to write with. And it's about supporting that child to understand that actually, in this context of writing, this is okay, but when it goes to other social situation, you're gonna struggle with this. So try and as much as possible adapt as much as possible. That's the only way that I can describe it, because it's a very, very difficult one, and it's very hard to get people to ditch their culture in favor of something else. But you can't force a child to write with a hand that is not favoring writing. And you need to be able to say to a parent, I'm sorry, but in my classroom, I am not able to do that. But I understand that I won't encourage them to use their left hand for other things, but for the writing, if we want to see the best from them, they're going to have to use the hand that's strongest to write. So I hope that's helpful. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, Rosa. Okay, we can take another question. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so
The next question will be, let's actually take someone who has this up. Anita Soa, if you can unmute to ask a question, and we still have some time, so we could take a couple of questions also from the chat. Anita, you can go ahead.
Okay, so my question is that I have a girl in my class. Anytime you teach her, she finds it difficult identifying the sounds and joining them to read. So in this situation, what do I do? Because she knows the phonics. Even if you tell her to spell cat, she'll start with maybe K, Q, something else. I just don't get her sometimes. Please, can you assist me?
Yeah, so when it comes to, I saw something really helpful on this. When it comes to letter recognition and phonics, if they are not able to remember their phonic sounds, then you need to take it backwards. So learning, it comes at different stages, right? So the actual recognition of the phonics comes, then the recognition of the sounds, then it comes to decoding. So if they are not recognizing the sounds, then go back to using songs, rhymes, pictures, practical activities to reinforce the recognition of the letters, and then reinforce the sounds that attach to the letters, then reinforce the phonetical sounding, then reinforce how you then do the coding. That makes sense. So you have to go backwards right to the basics. So it doesn't matter what age they are, go back to the basics. If you don't get the basics in terms of recognition and then sound, you are not going to be able to build up on it. So for any of you teachers, if your child has poor comprehension, then you need to go back to fluency. If your child has poor fluency, then you need to go back to word recognition. If your child has poor word recognition, then you need to go back to phonics and decoding. If they have poor phonics and decoding, then you need to go back to phonemic awareness. So just the recognition of the letters, the phonemic letters. So I hope that makes sense and that's helpful.
Next question is, and I'm taking this from Doris Gold in the chat, says, I'm taking a child with autism who is hyperactive and has delayed speech. He is 6 years old. How can I handle him?
Okay, so when it comes to autistic children, it's really important to get to know them and understand how they operate and how they present. So a lot of the times we try and stop the behaviors that they display, which are really natural behaviors. So for example, stimming. So some children will stim, they will hand flap, they will vocalize, they might rock, they might pace. You need to know your child and know that those behaviors are not them trying to disrupt your class or for them being difficult. but that's how they are regulating themselves. That's how they are keeping themselves calm. That's how they are focusing and paying attention. And you may think that they don't know what's going on around them, but they really do. So you need to know the child and you need to know how they operate. So what behaviors represent what? So when they're happy, speak to their parents and find out when they are happy and they're calm, what does their behavior look like? And if they say to you, oh, when he's happy and calm, you'll see that he's walking backwards and forwards. Then if you see that in your classroom, then you know that actually, okay, so he's happy and he's calm. Let me get him involved in whatever the next activity is. If you ask the parent when he's starting to get agitated or he's upset, what does his behavior look like? And they'll tell you, oh, he'll start to make this growling noise and you'll see that he's looking from left to right, or he'll get up and run to the door. Then when you see that in your classroom, you know that, oh, something's going wrong here. So then you'll be able to work out, okay, what is it that's going wrong so that you can correct it, so you can get him back to the place that you want him to be. And in terms of speech, he may not have outward speech, but how is he communicating? Does he come and take your hand and lead you to something? Does he point with his hands? Does he point with his eyes? Does he favor particular things? So learn to read his behavior, because he is communicating, but it's not just via speech. But also have a lot of visuals in your class, pictures of things, physical. So if they don't have much language, have the basic things in. So like maybe have a cup, and he'll know that when he shows you that cup, it means he wants water. Have a book and a pencil so that when he sees that, he knows that it's writing time. Have practical items in the classroom that you can use to represent the communication that you want them to have, but also have pictures of things that you can also use to help him to communicate. So it's really about knowing your child, because every autistic child is different. So unless you know them on an individual basis, you're going to struggle to know how to meet their needs. So hope that's helpful.
Great. We will take a question from Smith Tamaklo. Smith, you can unmute and ask your question.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry if my voice is down because my video to network, but I think I'll be able to make it. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity, because this has been one of the areas that I've also experienced with my little years in the teaching field, actually. I got to realize right from the onset, the presenter did made a very serious, give out a serious information that inclusion is not the same as integration. And then to me alone, I realized that yes, most of we teachers, we are very much at fault, just because they said inclusive education. So we add up all students in the classroom for the sake of inclusion. But for the real work to be done, we are not really doing that. So my question goes this way. During the presentation, you did mention that there are several ways in which we can teach. You did mention that is a multi-sensory teaching. So the visuals, auditory, and then hands-on activities. All these are methods that we can involve in the classroom. But I want to ask, so at the end of the day, after using all these methods, yet the mode of assessment, that is the cumulative assessment at the end of, let's say, the term or the semester, is going to be in the same model, not actually addressing the need of each child, then how then beneficial has our work been in the classroom? I really want to really get clarification on that, because if at the end of the day we try the various method of teaching to address the need of those children, yet assessment period, we need to go back to the primitive way of assessing the student. How is it going to be then? Thank you.
That is such a good question. Thank you so much for raising that. And it touches on something that absolutely burns us here at ADO. So there's two things. We need to change the way we assess. And the only way to be able to change that is if we all start to advocate for our students and start to speak up and say, actually, this is not good enough. In the 21st century, why are we still only assessing in this way? That's one. The other way is, as teachers, we create assessments within our classrooms that develop the skills that they need to manage the formal assessment at the end of the unit or the semester or the program of learning. So we can still assess verbally, we can still assess through practicals, but we still give them the opportunity to be able to do written feedback. We can request accommodations for our students. So we can request that our students use laptops. We can request, if that's something that's possible, we can request for students to have a reader. So somebody will be in the assessment and read for them. We can request for students to have a scriber. So somebody will be in the assessment and write for them. Now, I know for a lot of schools, that's not going to be possible because you're in a rural area, you don't have access to those things. But for a lot of schools, it is possible. But unless we make more noise about how unfair our assessment system are, we will continue to penalize our children who don't do well in those kind of assessments. So we need to advocate, we need to raise the awareness, but as teachers, we need to incorporate other ways of assessing into our day-to-day classroom experience. And when we build the confidence of our students because we're showing them that they can do it, it often makes it a lot easier to manage that formal written assessment. Because part of the issue around the formal written assessment is around confidence. A lot of our children do not have confidence. They feel like failures because the scores come back so low. But if you've given them other opportunities for them to see that actually they are winners and they are fantastic and they are intelligent and they are great, they will not rely so heavily on the validation of that written assessment. So it's a huge piece of work that needs to be done. There's a lot the government has to do to help us in this, but we are shouting from the rooftops that we need to change. If we are serious about multisensory learning, then we have to change and deliver multisensory assessment. But it's one step at a time. So everyone just has to do what they can from where they are.
And if I could also chip in something is the Ghana Education Service and WAEC have this arrangement that when it comes to BEC or SHS exams, students can get accommodations, but then the child has to be assessed by somebody who is certified to do assessment and have a detailed, recognized report. And you will need to take it to GES very early. I know that BC is coming around like June-ish. If a child have learning difficulties like dyslexia and they need a support, for example, an extra time doing the exam or a scriber, for instance, at this time we're talking, that report should already be given to GES and follow-up have been done with WAEC to have that accommodation. If we wait for so long and you get to them during the time of exams, they will not provide those accommodations. But as teachers also, as much as we as African dyslexia organizations and other organizations that are at the forefront championing this, you also have that responsibility. When they come on the field to take data, please share their information with them. They're asking you to practice inclusive education, but if you're holding on to some of these key details, they might feel like they're doing something right. And I would say this to you, it came like, for example, the surveys that most of you took it, and those of you who haven't taken it, please make sure you take it. But it shows you ask somebody, have you read the inclusive education policy? And they said, no. Is your school practicing the inclusive education policy? And they say, yes. Okay, so what kind of practice are you doing? And that's where the reality sets in. The person then says that, no, we don't have access to resources and all that. So then why do you even first of all say that you're practicing? Is tell the truth, because when you tell the truth, nothing will happen to you. But when we're trying to cover it a bit, thinking that, oh, we're helping them, we are rather worrying our children. So you also be an advocate of change and let them know the reality on the ground. Let's all raise our voice together and say that if you're asking us to practice this, then you should put A, B, and C in place so that when it comes to we assessing children or during exams, then the same inclusion run through to the end. And we could all do that together. If all of us here, we are over 400 here, we're almost 500. Imagine if we make our voice, they will wonder what we are talking about and they will listen to us. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will take one question from the chat. I know Miss Justina wants you all to go to like a breakout room to discuss few things among yourself. Maybe we can commit like 10 minutes to it, but we'll take this from Sefako that says that a child in our class is experiencing challenges with number recognition and general identification, color recognition, and among others. Even after being provided with the answer and prompted to repeat them, she still struggles with. Despite our effort to employ multisensory teaching method, she continues to face difficulties in her learning process. However, she shows enthusiasm during circle time activities. I wonder what those activities are. I'm even excited about it. We have engaged her parents in a conversation regarding her challenges, and they confirmed that they have observed similar difficulties at home. How can we assist her in overcoming these obstacles?
Okay, so the fact that the parents have recognized that these challenges exist is a really good thing. And I think if you have delivered multisensory learning and you've put the interventions in place and she's still struggling, then it's time to call in a specialist and get some input from a specialist professional to see what the issue is. If it's just about color, then, you know, is it an understanding thing? Is it a sight recognition thing? Like what is the actual barrier? But I'm interested in the fact that she really enjoys circle times, which then says to me that maybe she's a more practical kinesthetic learner. And so things that where there's circle time, movement, song, rhyme, she responds to that better. And it would be interesting to know how the color activities are delivered. Is it practical things? Is it through play? Is it sensory? Because they all help to reinforce the learning. So I would say do a review of the learning. How are you teaching these things? Are you trying different ways of teaching and they all coming out with the same result? And if so, then get specialist input. And I try and give her more practical lessons rather than theoretical lessons and see if that makes a difference as well. But I would say it might be time to start speaking to a specialist if the parents have also noted those things.
Absolutely. I would add something, and what the comment Justina made is quite valid in a way that, so I don't know how many of you here know me and my story, and I started reading at the age of 17, and I see a question like that in the chat that is talking about student being like 16 and 17 in GHS. And I was in GHS, I was almost 18 when I was in GHS. But the reason why I'm sharing these with you is you're saying you're teaching in multi-sensory ways and stuff, but then you did mention this child shows enthusiasm in circle activities. What are those activities? Have you thought about incorporating the learning into those activities that she likes so that she learns. So I was being taught, and all my teachers thought they are fantastic because the school was very known to produce good students. But I was always behind. It was until I failed GHS and I couldn't get to high school and ended up going to a catering school was when I started learning because I love to cook. The only thing I knew or loved to do when I was young was to cook. And when I went to catering school, this is the environment that my mind started opening up by hands-on practical cooking. My mind started, but nobody realized that. They might have thought that, oh, we put in all the instructions, they've given me private teachers, my parents are bringing this person in to teach me. It wasn't working until I got to the catering school where I started enjoying education. So you might ask yourself, these activities that she's showing interest in, how can we then blend it and use that to teach her? So you may have to think through a little bit, but we just started. A lot of facilitators are going to come, and you have someone actually doing learning disabilities, and you can ask more questions in this regard. So Ms. Justina, do you want them to go for a breakout room? Because we still have a lot of questions. We still have a lot of hands up. Do you want us to keep addressing it, or how do you want us to go about?
So I feel like we have so many questions, we're not going to get through all of it. But I would like them to just have an opportunity to just share kind of what their expectations are amongst themselves, and then we'll take some feedback from them. Yep. So if we go into the breakout room and just, yeah, if all of you can just share what your expectations are for the next few weeks, and then we'll take some feedback from you. So that will really help us as well to know that what we've planned for you is on point, is relevant, or if there's anything else that we need to think about.
Thank you very much. So we're going to go into a breakout room. What breakout room is, I know most of you are familiar with it. For those of you who are not familiar, we're going to populate, something will come on your screen, and you click on the number that will come on your screen. You go into that breakout room. We'll give like 7 minutes just for you to get to know yourself. You've had a lot of numbers, so we hope we could do that. And then come back again here, and then we will wrap up and then look ahead to the next one. So please don't leave and go and see. Please go into the room, chit chat among yourself, introduce yourself. This is also an opportunity to network and get to know other teachers in other locations. Chit chat among yourself. What's your expectation? What you have taken from this, and come back here in this room. Okay, thank you very much. Please click on the numbers on your screen and go to the breakout room. Once we come back, for all those of you, the questions, we will try and see how we can answer all of them within 10 minutes, and then we will wrap up and go. Thank you all.
Welcome back. Welcome back, all of you. So I'm believing that it probably wasn't long enough for all of you to be able to share your expectations, and some of you were not able to join the rooms at all for some reason. So apologies if you didn't get to be in the breakout room, and thank you for all of you who were able to join and make contributions. So in the chat, please type in your feedback in terms of your expectations, anything that was shared, please type it into the chat. We are conscious that it's now 8 o'clock and we want to really respect your time. We said that we would end at 8. So I'm going to hand over to Madam Rosa to give the announcements, and I look forward to the next session that I have with you. But thank you all so much for your contributions, your questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to answer all of them, but I'm sure through the course of the program, we will get to touch on all of it. We will make a note of the questions so that we can keep that in mind for future ones. So I'll hand over to Lady Rosa, and then thank you all again. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Justina. Thank you for the wonderful section on into introduction of inclusive education. I know there are so many burning questions that you have. Some of them you could kindly share it with us in the numbers that we've been messaging it you on. Also, you can share it in their attendance forms that we will be sharing. And Precious, please put the attendance link into here so people can just take it right away. But we would also be sending it to you via your emails and your WhatsApp. I have to say that I was quite surprised that a lot of you, your emails that you entered, you omitted things from it. So whenever we email you, it bounced back. And so please, next time you are filling forms somewhere, you may not have the advantage of an organization contacting you via SMS and WhatsApp, and they will just stick with emails. And if you do that, you'll miss up on the big opportunities. A lot of you, your emails were not going through. And also some of you that your emails went through, you don't even acknowledge emails. So we don't even know if you got it or not. And so that's why we're sticking with WhatsApp to be the main area where we will pour a lot of information there. The slides Ms. Justina used will be shared with you. Please, 100% attendance for this program will get all their certificates. And so please make sure you take the attendance and you fill in the feedback forms. Okay. In the course of the program, we will populate another survey, and the survey is for you to let us know if you have students with learning difficulties in your classroom or you're teaching them, how many of them. We want to understand. Some of this information we are getting, it is helping us as an organization to be able to craft out good programs based either training or look for resources that we'll be able to use to support you. So if you answer it in the most honest way, we will know what you need. But if you just put in words because you want to make us happy, then you know that we will never be able to support you. So the next class comes up on Tuesday, the 18th of February, and it's at 6 p.m. And it's going to be a class you do not want to miss. So please look on the calendar that we shared with you and take it. Aside that, we will be sharing another link with you. It is for the NESI program on understanding dyslexia. Please, you need to enter the right name you want to have on your certificate and your right email. With the NESI program, if you enter a wrong email, you cannot access it anymore. And we have only one license per participant. If you enter twice, we will go and delete all of them. So please make sure you enter in the right name, the right email address, so that you're able to take advantage of this training. They are currently also giving out 8 weeks for you to test their reading materials for your children that are struggling readers. So we're going to put that link as well for you to access that resource as well. It is only limited for 8 weeks, I think, till April or so. So please take advantage of it, because nursing programs, you have to buy them. So whenever they want to give us something to support the work we're doing, we encourage you to take advantage of it. Please encourage all your fellows that you know they have gotten opportunity to be part. We had a lot of people be interested in this training, and we had to select. And so if you are here and we selected you and you're not showing up, you're being very unfair to us for the people that we have said no to. So please encourage your friends as well to be here. We thank you for your attention and for everything. The attendance link has been shared, and it will also be shared in your WhatsApp. So please watch out for it. The attendance phrase for this section is equity. Equity. And I'm going to put it in the chat. Equity. The attendance phrase is equity. And please don't forget it, because you will need it to put it in your attendance form that you are going to fill. So we wish you all the best. It is 1 week. You have all these. We go back, we will share the recording as well, and you can re-watch the recording as well. For people who couldn't join live, they have up to today is for Tuesday. So they have up to Saturday to watch it, because by Saturday, the attendance link will be closed and they cannot enter it again. Thank you all very much. We hope this was useful to you, and we appreciate the work you're doing with the little support you have, and the lives you're changing is amazing. And we say, God bless you. Allah bless you. Whatever you believe in, bless you. We love you, and we look forward bonding and connecting with you beyond today. Take care, and bye-bye.